Welcome back to Smut Chat with Jeen Bean. I am joined today by one of my absolute favorite humans in this space, someone that I really, really deeply admire. I'm always curious for her thoughts and opinions. She is smart as a whip, talented to boot, and I am really, really incredibly lucky to call her my friend and colleague. So, Ravenelle, please say hello and tell us about your wonderful self.
Hi. So I write under the name Ravenelle. Um, in this wonderful world of audio erotica that we exist in, I'm a little bit of a listener, mostly a writer, and I like to think of myself as kind of a curator, a facilitator, and an advocate for empowering audio erotica experiences for specifically Black and other, women and femmes of color. There are a lot of different ways that I kind of come to do all that, and primarily that turns out to be script writing.
Well, I will say you are one of the most talented scriptwriters I've had the privilege of coming across. Every single Ravenelle script has just been like chef's kiss. Well, Ravenelle is someone who's written. I think I've seen your scripts on Reddit, on Quinn. I think maybe on Dipsy soon? Question mark? Yeah.
I know here, yeah, in the coming weeks.
Amazing. So you're all over the place and your writing is so fantastic. So before we get into like the topic of today's smut chat, the first thing I want to ask you is just like tell me about you. Like how did you get into writing smut?
I think I got into writing smut the same way a lot of other people did. It was the pandemic. I was a new mom, so my daughter was born at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were stuck inside for 2 years. Those are just hard times, and people were really looking for something to fill those kind of emotional gaps. And I initially went to Reddit and learned about GWA, Gone Wild Audio. The other main sub for audio erotica, I think, is the realm of erotic audio. And I don't remember if that one had started yet
Mhm.
by then, but I think it was mostly GWA. Yeah. And so just like puttering around GWA and clicking around, it was terrifying. I was not like a Reddit person before I got into that. And so, I was definitely in over my head. I was figuring out the whole tag thing like as I went. It was a mess. But one thing I did notice was in my searching, it was really, really hard to find content that I personally related to as, a
Mm.
30 something year old woman, as a Black woman, as a new mom. Like those three things coming together made for very slim pickings. Those are the things that I was looking for at the time and just really struggling to find. And it's funny, the first creator I ever listened to was a guy who I don't think is even in, the audio erotica world anymore, but his name was Samuel Enderby. He was just fantastic. I think he was German, but he was somebody
Mhm.
who felt very comfortable doing all kinds of audios, specifically with Black and other women of color, disabled folks, men, women, the whole gender spectrum. He really did it all. And I loved that because I was like, look, I'm new here. I don't know what I like. So just show me stuff and I'm going to try it. And he seemed like a very safe person to do that with. And so it was really, really great. It was funny. I got a chance to actually say that to him at one point. Like I left him a little message and I was like, sorry if this sounds really gushy and crazy, but you're pretty great and I love all your stuff. And yeah.
And then don't look at me.
Yeah, it's like, and please forget I exist. He was a great introduction to, I think, the audio erotica world, except for the fact that he set the bar really high and the rest of the audio erotica space was not on that level.
That is, oh, it's always when the first person you come across is so fantastic and you're like, "Oh, great, this is the standard." And then you realize very quickly that is not the case. Okay, so how did you transition from being a listener into the writing space? Because clearly, like I think most people who would know you in this space know you as a writer.
So it all stemmed from that feeling and that idea of not being able to find what I was looking
Mhm.
for. And again, it's that kind of age component, the Black woman part and the mom part that all come together to just make for something really difficult to find in the existing space that I
Mhm.
was in at the time. Like many other things, I was like, I mean, I'm sitting around the house, I have time, I have the skills. I'm just going to create the thing that I'm looking for and help other people give me what I'm looking for, like what I
Yeah.
need. And so that's when I wrote Dilf on Duty.
Oh, I love that
That
one.
was the first.
Yeah.
I do too. My God. I mean, it was the first script I ever wrote. And so it shows
Wait,
growth.
that's your first script? That's actually wild, Rev. It's like most people's first scripts are like my first script, like don't go listen to that one. But like that was your first script is actually wild because it's so good.
Man, I loved that thing. And it really, yeah, it was my first script ever. And you can kind of tell if you go back through like my messages and stuff, because I sent people all these messages like, hey, I don't really know how to write a script, but I know how to tell a
Mhm.
story. So, like, what should I do in this part or something like that? Yeah, so I have such a soft spot for that script in particular because it really just came out of a place of need. It's about a couple who haven't had sex in a while because they have a new kid and trying to like reconnect and find that new sexuality that exists in parallel to their role as parents. And I was like, yeah, relatable. So so it was just an excellent outlet.
So, first of all, I love that script and I love that it came from a place of need. I do have a question that I'm already throwing you your first curveball here. I feel like it's very common for folks who are not represented in the mainstream and interpret that however you want to have to create the things that we're looking for ourselves, that we can't just go into a space and have those things exist for us. And so we often create the things that we wish we had, right, for us, by us, is sort of a phrase that I hear a lot. I'm wondering how you feel about that. Just the idea that, like, you were looking for a thing, it wasn't there, so I just made it. Does it come with mixed feelings, or do you feel any kind of way about it? I'm just sort of curious to hear your thoughts on that.
It does come with mixed feelings because, at the end of the day, I'm tired. I'm tired of having to do this for everything that I want.
Yes.
There's so many examples of things that I want that it don't seem like a heavy lift or a terribly complex ask, but they just don't exist, because Black women's interests weren't necessarily prioritized for a really long time in the mainstream. And so the stuff just isn't there. In this case, it really was, I needed to be the change I wanted to see, or else it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And coming into the kind of Quinstagram space, I met other Black women and a little bit on Reddit too. I met other Black women who were desperate for that representation in the same way that I was. And, I was like, we deserve to feel cute too. Like, all these other people get to say, oh my God, I felt so loved and seen and beautiful. And I was like, yeah, that'd be nice.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, sounds fun. I really got behind the idea of either creating myself or facilitating the creation of these kinds of audios and the kind of content that I wanted for myself and for, the other Black women in the community.
Yeah. Well, that is a perfect segue to talk about BQC, or the Black Congressional Congress, which, if y'all haven't heard of them yet, please go give them an immediate follow on Instagram. If I'm not mistaken, you're one of the co-founders of BQC, yes?
Yes.
Okay, amazing.
Um, BQC is so close to my heart because it's very grassroots and it all started from, I think, well, yeah, when I mentioned kind of coming onto the scene in Instagram and just kind of looking around at the landscape and coming to find the other Black women that were in kind of the Quinn's fan sphere and just having that bond and that connection was so, so, so beautiful. And then, for it to go from, oh, we kind of laugh at each other's comments and like each other's stories to, oh, we're gonna sit in a group chat. And when the group chat came together, that's when I was like, oh no, these are my people.
That's the best
These are
feeling.
definitely my people. Yeah. It was so fantastic to just be surrounded by so many smart and talented and committed and loving Black women who were all kind of experiencing the same thing at the same time, which was the parallel of my love for audio erotica. And, we all had Quinn at the time. That in parallel with the accountability that we expect to be served in the products that we're buying. Like, it's not a heavy lift, it's not a hard ask. We just want to be represented. If you're going to take my money, I'm going to need you to give me something
Yeah.
that works for me, you know? Yeah. And so bonding with a group of women around that was really great. And like so many other things, you get around with a group of girlfriends and you start joking around about silly things and coming up with ideas. They're like, man, if I was able to, I would totally do this, that, or the other. Again, it's just that mindset of, well, I mean, what if we did do that? Nobody else is doing it, and then nobody is rushing to give us what we want, which is specifically, more diverse content. So yeah, what if we did do that? So BQC was born.
Well, and everyone is grateful for it because my goodness, the caliber of writers that you all have over there at BQC is just unbelievable. Every time there's a BQC script, it's like I have to listen to this. Like I can't I like it's goes on my immediate listen list. And I think the people, gosh, all of the writers over there are just so fantastic, yourself included. And I'm curious because like right, audio erotica, the format being audio, that there isn't really meant to be a visual cue. A well-written story is going to tell you maybe what's going on so that you're not confused about am I sitting, am I standing, like those types of things, choreography in an audio. But in the audio format, it is meant to be for everyone, right? The idea is that anybody could see themselves in any audio. But we also know that that's not really the case.
Exactly. I was like, that sounds lovely.
It sounds
However,
really great. And if that were the case, we might not have BQC, right? Um,
exactly.
so I'm curious about this
Exactly.
because, like coming onto the scene, looking for something that spoke to where you were at in your life at that moment, being
Yeah.
a woman in her mid 30s, Black woman, new mother, looking for those things and not seeing it. There's always this question of like, not anyone could or should write that. Like, I definitely would raise eyebrows if certain people tried to write that audio. So I'm curious to hear like your thoughts on like, do you think it's partially because there wasn't a place where Black writers felt like they could write, or is it like because there's plenty of Black listeners, like there's this definitely not like a there aren't enough Black people who listen to audio erotica. That's definitely not the case, and anyone who says that has not been paying attention. Is BQC an answer or one of the answers to being able to write authentically for Black experiences and Black listeners and Black voices?
I like to hope so. And I don't want to speak for anybody else. So
Sure.
I guess I'll speak for myself in saying that I know how to tell a story. Like that's the skill that I have. I have that kind of writer, storyteller knack, but I only can really tell my stories. If nothing else, BQC really encouraged me to just connect with other Black women and listen to
Mm.
hear the stories that they wanted told because we deserve it. There's so many stories that are just so far disconnected from our lived and cultural experience that we're just like, oh, that's cute, but like, yeah, no, this whole self-insert thing, that is not me. I just firmly believe that we deserve to have content that, well reflects our experience, our priorities, that just the things that we care about, but also that just gets to celebrate who we are. I also think there's kind of an interesting lineup between the timing of all of this and kind of where audio erotica and Quinn was in its evolution compared to where we were kind of politically and all of that, it was, let's say like 2024-ish. And, in the United States, we were on a wave of hopefully having like the first, not just female president, but a Black female president. There was so much hope there. And I think for me, that hope was very galvanizing. And I was like, okay, well, if Kamala can show up and deal with all this mess, then I can just show up and write my scripts and, hustle to get them out there. I think it was just a really important time for Black women in general. And it really made me want to do what I could to give them the experience with audio erotica that I felt like they deserved.
I want to highlight two things you said. The first thing is that you talked about how you write from sort of your own experiences, and why it was so important for you to connect with other Black women and their experiences. And I want to highlight that because I think it's really important to say out loud that like Black women are not a monolith. No group is a monolith, which is where the power in the collective, like the collective idea of BQC is
Yes.
so powerful because there is diversity within your stories, all of your stories, the
Yeah.
stories that you all write. The second thing I want to highlight is what you said around the political climate of maybe when all of this was getting started, during a very different political climate than we are in currently. And I think that's really important because I do think, and I get this, let me preface this by saying, same, me too. We come to Audio Erotica, the Quinstagram spaces, these fun Reddit subreddits, all this for fun, for a release, for an escape from reality. The reality of the world are pretty horrible right now. And I think people are seeking out maybe like a place where there isn't conflict, a place there isn't politics doesn't exist. But I think the thing that like I understand that thinking while also recognizing that like our existence as women of color, you as a Black woman, me as an Asian woman, our existence is politicized. And so to be able to try and come into a space like this in a different political climate, everything shifts because of who's in power and like what's going on politically across the nation, and across the globe. So I just wanted to highlight those things because I think they're really powerful and I don't want people to like miss what you said because I think they're really powerful.
That's a big part of it for me, I think, because things are a little bit rough right now, politically, and it has really changed things, even in how I convey stories. I mean,
Mm,
not to get too political about it right now, but, I have started really caring about conveying things like, hey, let's talk about birth control because that's real. Like that is increasingly important now that reproductive rights are being, gutted the way that they are. And actually in one script that I have, it really is about like a couple in a long-term relationship who has decided that they're not going to do the condoms thing anymore because they're only having sex with each other and they have a regular sex life and so condoms just seem kind of duplicative and it's like, oh, okay, but you have your IUD, right? And he's like, yeah, that's kind of the conversation. And then there's this moment where it's like, if we have any issues come up, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And it's like, yeah. And then you move on. But I just wanted to make sure to have that moment because that's what we're dealing with right now.
mm,
Those are the kind of conversations that people have to have in their sex lives in 2025 in the United States.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually really telling that like even just someone who is running for office looking like so many Black and South Asian women in the world
Yeah.
changed the way people could feel about like hope and putting their stories out there versus like now it's shifted. It's talking about different things that are sort of front of mind for everybody. I think it's super smart. I think this is one of the reasons why I think you're the smartest person I know. Sort of in the same vein, in your opinion, what's important about seeking out and supporting writers of color? Like writers specifically. I'm voice actors off also, but I'm specifically talking about writers.
We we as in Black women are represented in the listener pool. We're there and in significant numbers. When artists and creators say, They want to create audios that help women feel sexy and seen and appreciated and all of those things. That needs to include Black women. You know, the vast majority of VAs in this space are white. You know, if they're saying that and they don't mean to include Black women in that, I'd appreciate it if they'd say so, just so I know that their content isn't for me. You know, Black women deserve to come along for this wild and wonderful audio erotica ride. I trust and I rely on the lived experiences of Black women and just the other insights that they can offer to enrich my storytelling and give it and ground it in that reality that we're all kind of seeking to highlight the fantasy that we're in. You know, too often I think Black women especially are expected to figure out how to make something work for them.
Yep.
I personally am just real tired of having to do
It's a
that.
lot of
So,
work.
yeah, it is a lot of constant work of just trying to figure out how to make stuff that isn't made for us work for us. This space is no different, but BQC is a reflection of how I, as a Black woman, wanted to kind of kind of assert myself and claim space, saying, I'm a Black woman, and for other Black women like me, I expect you to hold up your end of the bargain. If you say you care about women's sexuality, that includes me. And that looks different for me as a Black woman than it may look for some of your other listeners, but I am no less deserving. One of the first major things that BQC ever did was write this beautiful open letter to Bad Influence Audios, just letting them know that we are huge fans. You know, we were really big fans of the productions that they came out with, but as Black women, we felt underserved. You know, this wasn't like a Karen, you know, let me talk to the manager kind of situation. But we made this post that just beautifully outlined not just what we were feeling and the experiences we were having, but we even often offered up, you know, little baby steps to get towards making it better.
That post is still up, by the way, just if anyone's interested.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that post is still up. I guess it's probably the first
I
one
think it is, yeah.
on BQC's grid. As you know, we were writing that out, it became even more clear that the answer was, wait a minute, why am I telling somebody else how to fix it? Why don't, you know, I can fix it. You get your girls around you and you handle it.
Yeah. Well, and I think even a step further to say, like, that might have been addressed to Bad Influence Audios, but it applies to like every voice actor,
It does.
you know, and I think that that representation piece is so. I mean, I feel like annoyed that I have to say it again. Does that make sense? I'm like, yeah, why do we have to
No, I
keep
totally get
saying?
it. Yep. How many posts do we have to make?
Yeah, because it's just honestly at a point, you know, it's the thing that I feel frustrated about, right, is I think women of color have been asked to what you said just a few minutes ago about like having to like find your like kind of do the work to mold yourself into the narrative or like do a little extra work to in order to be able to put yourself in that space. I think women of color have always been asked to see themselves represented in a majority white narrative or just not have been asked to not, right? But both are a problem. But when we ask folks to try and see themselves in an audio for us, it is not met with the same reaction or expectation, right? It's very much not received the same way. So that's like I think that's one of the things I'm curious to hear from you is like, obviously, you are a person who's listened to lots of audio erotica, and I wanted to hear your experience of what it was like to hear an audio that maybe wasn't for you. And I'm not talking like what's in the mainstream, but like maybe an audio that made it might have been written for like a trans listener, or a Latina listener. Like, do you have a memory of what that was like? And like, what do you remember thinking and feeling as you were listening to that audio?
So, and it came to mind immediately when you said a trans listener. I believe it's Bad
It
Fantasy.
is.
Yeah, okay,
I,
you might
I
know
know
who I'm
exactly.
talking know what I'm gonna say. Oh my God. So it was this audio that was directed at a trans woman. And just from the first few moments of it, just the yearning and the heat and the chemistry, all of it was there. And I was gobbling it up. And I was like, I don't even care that he's not talking to me. I'm happy for her. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
get it,
girls,
girl.
girl.
Like, yeah. Yeah, I was happy for her, even if I wasn't in it, I have a very immersive imagination. And so in a situation like that, when it's like, they're meeting up at a bar or something, I felt like I was the person sitting on the bar stool next to them while they had their date. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on, what's going on over there? I loved it. That audio, I come back to it a lot because it just makes me think about a whole lot of different things. Like, I know that audio wasn't written for me in the sense that I am not a trans woman, and so the listener, the implied listener, and I are not the same. But it was written so well that I could find so many tidbits of myself in that audio that did get spoken to. Not so that I can take the place of the listener in this case, but just so I could relate. It just came together so beautifully. Highly recommend that audio. I wish I could remember what it was called, but
I can't remember, but I know exactly which, because as soon as you said
yeah.
Bad Fantasy, I was like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. Yep. It
Um,
is
yeah.
top 10 favorite.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Of just like I can be a voyeur. Like I feel
Hmm.
like one of the ways
Like
in
that's
which
the whole
yeah,
thing.
it's a whole trope. And I think it's like there was a lot of caretaking and healing in that audio, if I'm remembering
Yeah.
correctly, and a lot of like conversation. What I really liked about that was a direct conversation about her transness, but it didn't
Yes.
focus it or tokenize her. It wasn't like
Hmm.
cooking up with you because you're trans. It was like, no, I know you're
Right.
trans. I know you're a woman. Like, why are we even having this conversation? And I
Yeah.
found that banter so refreshing and
Yeah.
almost like, honestly, almost like a model of like, this is how we should be talking to one another. Like I wanted to send it to everyone, be like, just listen to this.
Absolutely.
Like you can skip the sexy parts if you don't want to.
Absolutely. Yeah, just the build up
Yeah.
is fine. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it is so good at addressing the listener
Mhm.
who is not the typical, M for F, late 20s white woman or cis het white
Mhm.
woman. Yeah, this is a unique listener, but they were able to convey it without othering.
Yeah.
And that is the part that is so important to me is, I appreciate experiences being curated to me and catered to me as a Black woman. But if the primary feeling that I get is, oh, she's not like other girls, or, oh, well, I've never had something like this before. I've never been with, so no, I'm not interested in any of that. I just want to be, I want to be old girl that could be in any of these audios, but, you know, that's just not that's not the norm. But yeah, Bad Fantasy really knocked it out of the park with that.
Yeah.
And I am forever impressed that he kind of led the way in the Quinn space of creating content, just really high quality content with a trans woman listener
Yeah.
and hopefully helping all the cis women on Quinn understand that, yeah, it's still really hot. Like, it
Yeah. That audio is so sexy. Like let's
is
like
so
it's
sexy. It is so sexy. And yeah, I just hope all the other cis women out there who may see that M for TF tag and think, oh no, I'll skip that. That's not for me. It was like, well, it's not about you, but it can be for you.
oh my God. That is the smartest thing you've ever I the it's not about you, but it can be for you is so smart, Rav. I'm like having a moment about this sentence you've just because I think that's exactly it is like that audio isn't about me, but I did feel like it was for me because there was so much love and care and warmth in that art, and then the spicy bits were woo. But
Yeah.
that
Whew.
was for me. You know what I mean? Like that felt
Yeah.
like it was for me, but it
Look,
wasn't
that was
about
for
me. Yeah,
me. Yeah.
but it wasn't about me. It's the same thing with Smooth as Silk that Gaia wrote, which oh my god, I'm
Yes.
obsessed with that audio.
I know.
Wasn't
Ugh.
about me, but it didn't feel like it wasn't for me. And I
Hmm.
love the way you're so smart. Okay,
Uh,
I'm gonna move on, but I'm obsessed with you. Anyway. Uh continue. I fully interrupted you.
now I don't even know. I'm just hooked on. He's like, oh, you're so smart.
You are. And I think the way you phrase things is why you're a really good storyteller and writer, is being able to differentiate those types of things. So on the last kind of question that I have officially for our little conversation, obviously one of the things, right? Because I've written a couple of audios for Asian listeners. You've written several audios for Black listeners, and sometimes I feel like a little bit of a responsibility to write those audios because there aren't a lot of Asian writers out there, or at least ones that aren't like publishing at the moment. There's a
Yeah.
couple that I can name. I can name more Black writers, but not enough. Like, definitely not
Yeah.
enough. So I'm curious to know, like, for anybody out there, women of color in particular, women and femmes of color, who are thinking about writing or have wanted to try it or are just trying to like curious about exploring it. Like, I'm curious if you have any advice for your fellow either writers of color, or you can target this specifically towards Black women writers, like any advice that you might give to folks who are looking to get into it.
Oh my goodness. Just write it. Like I love hearing people's origin stories about how they get into, smutty script writing because all of them say, you know, I had this stuff just going through my head all the time. And I kind of felt weird about it because I'd be like, oh, I'm sitting at work and I'm thinking about smut. But, write it down. And script writing is just a format, or scripts are just a format that you have to learn if you're not accustomed to it. But yeah, if you have the narrative going on in your head, put it on paper. And once you go through that exercise of getting it out of your head, I think there are just so many benefits to it from a creative standpoint. You have the framework to start to flesh out a real story. But also, I think there are tons of like personal and emotional and psychological benefits to it. It's like, hey, all that smutty goodness, that doesn't have to live just inside your head. It can come out and it's absolutely fine. You can let your freak flag fly as boldly as you want, especially in this space, because people are ready to get real nasty. And that's so liberating and empowering. I want every Black woman that is interested in kind of celebrating their sexuality and really liberating themselves in that way. I want them to find an outlet, kind of like script writing has been for me and a lot of other, you know, Black women writers. I want them to find that outlet because, again, we deserve to have these extraordinary sexual experiences. A lot of that is rooted in just being able to show up in spaces as ourselves and tell our stories from our perspective. And, we don't need anybody else to necessarily tell them for us. We have the skills. We just have to believe that we can do it and have the kind of confidence and conviction that we're going to make the stuff that we want to see until somebody else is going to do it for us.
I could not think of a better note to end on than the idea that Black women's creativity, Black women's sexuality matters, and that people should go out and find their thing, whatever format
Find your
that,
thing,
yeah.
find your thing and just put it on paper.
Ravenelle, thank you so much for spending like a whole hour of your evening with me chatting about this. I could literally keep you here for hours, but I promise I won't do that to you. I know we have lives, and it's a school night, but thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to Smut Chat with Jeen Bean. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you for coming and being on Smut Chat and for sharing your wisdom and expertise and making me maybe fall a little deeper in love with you again, but that's okay.
I mean, No, I am so appreciative of the opportunity to come and kind of talk about this stuff because I love to yap, but also this is something near and dear to my heart. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Your care and love comes through in everything that you do, everything that you write, and everyone that you get to interact, or everyone who gets to interact with you.